Welcome, everybody. I've got Barry behind bars here with me this morning, so he's going to be a little bit loud. Good morning, everybody. I don't think you guys could hear me because I had my microphone turned down so low. If you can still hear me, put a 1. I'm trying to cut down on the sound of Barry behind bars. If you can hear me, put a 1. Okay, very good. All right, so I've got my sound turned down very far on my microphone and move my microphone very close to me in an effort to cut down on whether you can hear the bird. Okay? I do too, BZ Mama. But I wanted to make a short video right now. Clearly, we don't have any access to the courtroom unless I get on an airplane and fly 4 hours and then drive 2 hours. Then I can be there. So, I want to take just a little bit. I'm feeling a little guilty. Got to be honest here. I'm feeling a little guilty that I saw where somebody wrote that they rely on me to bring them hope where this case against Barry Morphew is concerned in the disappearance and declared death of Suzanne Morphew. Well, I've just spent a week, seven videos, talking about how badly things can go wrong when one team is outclassed by the other team. It can be a literal disaster, right? It's like sending a little small town high school football team to play against a Super Bowl team. It can go badly. I'm beginning, well, I've had some worries for quite some time about Chaffee County, about Linda Stanley's ability to prosecute this case. In the beginning, I think she was a big talk and she was wearing her black leather. But then these cracks in the armor began to show. We all felt very uncomfortable as she begins giggling and flirting on Profiling Evil, right? We're all thinking, wait a minute, what is happening here? This is not a ticket to fame. This is a woman's life, a really important woman who deserves some dignity and some justice, right? So we all felt uncomfortable. Then we became even more uncomfortable as it became clear that Chris McDonough was there, another television star, was there driving past Barry being arrested, right? We get more uncomfortable. Oh, I was 15 minutes late. Well, the only reason you were 15 minutes late is because Barry didn't leave the house when they believed that he would. He was late leaving the house, and you were stuck driving back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, waiting to get your video. Just like Chad Daybell. Someone was there. Someone had a heads up. Someone knew when Chad was going to be getting arrested, and you just happened to drive by with your camera ready to get just a fraction of a second of somebody taking a perp walk. How's that happen? Is it just miracle work? I don't think so. So we felt uncomfortable for a while. Can I ask you guys a question? How bad is the bird? Is the bird, can you still hear him, or is he muted pretty well? Hopefully y'all can't hear him at all. Is my hope. Okay. So, he's a parrot. When you start talking, he thinks it's time for him to talk. The bird is not muted at all. Oh, God. I'm so sorry. I can hear him, but it's cool. He's more in the background. Okay, so it's not really distracting, I hope. Okay. Now then, so we got some problems, and so I wanted to talk a little bit about what it is that is making things go so badly. Well, that's it in a nutshell. They're true believers, but the two of them. This is Iris Eyten and Iris Eyten and Dru Nielsen. They're on the cover of Super Lawyers. And more important than that, they both were honored during the 2019 law review. In fact, Dru Nielsen's one of her cases was the case of the year, and Iris Eyten was elected as the top attorney of the year. This isn't a good law firm. You know what I mean? They are not good. They're the standard. They're the best. They're the best that Colorado has to offer. And in many instances, they're the best that this United States of America has to offer. They came to play. They want their portion of Barry's $3 million. And they're going to get it, I think. Right? So I worry that the prosecution is nervous, right? I worry that they recognize that this is bigger than them. But we see the prosecutor in the Chad Daybell case. I wish I could see this bird. He's literally dancing as he's talking to me. That's so funny. He thinks we're having a great time together. So Rob Wood, right, who is prosecuting the Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow cases, murders. Look, he's out of his league. He knows that. He's not a dumb man. And so he called in a superstar. He found another one like Nielsen and Eyten. She's a little bit different. She is death. She does 100% death penalty. She does a lot of consulting work. That's what you do when you're the best in your field. You become a consultant, and people hire you to come in, tell them what to do, how to fix their problems, and then you leave and go to the next problem to fix, right? So they do play dirty, BZ Mama, but they have a game plan. They have a very set way that they go through and they manage these cases and make them happen. And we've already seen something in the Barry Morphew case that they did during the Tom Fallis case. And I'll get to that. So Wood, he recognized, hey, I need to do better here. I need to bring in some reinforcements. It's going to take more than just little old me and our little small town attorneys, because this is bigger than us. And we don't want to mess this up. The eyes of the world are on us right now because we got 2 dead babies, right? Tylee and JJ. And so he got permission from the city and from the state to hire some experts, and they circled the wagons and they got ready to go up against world-class attorneys. Well, in Chad and Lori's case, they didn't get world-class attorneys because they're not Barry Morphew. We don't know where Barry Morphew's got his money from. But when you're a person who is accomplished in your field, you're educated, you work hard to do well, and you recognize, well, I'm not a millionaire. I'm working my butt off doing the best I can. I'm a professional. I'm not a millionaire. How does this bozo, who can't seem to put one foot in front of the other, how does this bozo end up owning 2 multi-million-dollar houses? He trashes a $100,000 truck once a year. Where is all his money coming from? Right? If you go and if you look at his background in Indiana, the list of lawsuits Barry Morphew was involved in for bad business practices was longer than Heels in the Air, Audrey or Audra or whatever her name is, Bullhorn Betty, longer than her rap sheet. I mean, he had a lot of lawsuits. Truly, I've never seen anything like it. So the gossip in their hometown was that Barry had lost all his contracts. People didn't want to work with him anymore. He's hard to get along with. He's volatile. He's unpredictable. He's impulsive. He tears things up. That was a big one. He tears things up. He's out of control. He's like a bull in a china closet. And you think to yourself, that can't be. How is that possible? You don't just tear things up and become a multimillionaire. It takes dedication and planning and organization, right? Not for Barry. Barry seems to be the goose with the golden egg. Anything he touches, he breaks, but he turns it into $1 million. Why? How does he do that? We don't know. But one thing we know for sure is that somehow this man who could not pay back his father-in-law the $100,000 that he borrowed from him, who could not pay back his wife her $500,000, it was actually around $400,000 that he ended up basically embezzling, lying to her about on how he was going to invest it. How does a man like Barry get multiple friends to give him the cash to purchase a $1.3 million house? How? It is very peculiar. He then turns around and sells the house for $1.6 million, which was at a respectable profit. So it gets, it's like Winnie the Pooh. It just gets curiouser and curiouser, right? Curiouser and curiouser. Now I'm gonna be making a video about Barry, the $1 million man. And I'm going to tell you all the things that I see that interfere with this idea that he can make $1 million. That this working class, you know, feet in the dirt kid turns around and makes several $1 million and then gets fired from all of his contract work, and he has to move because there's no more work for him. That was the rumor. I have no way of knowing if that's true or not, but that is absolutely what's been repeated time and time and time again in Indiana. So it is a very curious set of circumstances. It's very curious. However, he does have the best of the best in terms of attorneys. He has the best of the best. There's no question about that. These are not hack attorneys. This is not Mark Means. You know what I mean? They know what they're doing in a big way. In a big way. So I wanted to take a little bit today, if y'all can manage the silly bird. I wanted to talk a little bit about who they are. Well, so for Dru Nielsen, who is the blonde, her case was actually featured in Law Week under an article that was entitled "Case of the Year Goes to Clemency Grant Over a Life Without Parole Sentence." And this was a case of a man named Brooks. Curtis Brooks received a life sentence without parole for the felony murder of a person who was driving a car, and he was killed as Brooks and a friend were carjacking him. Now, during the trial, it was accepted that Brooks did not kill the driver of the car, that the other guy killed the driver of the car. But nevertheless, apparently, people didn't really believe that. The judge and the jury apparently didn't believe that, because the guy was a teenager, but he was still given a life sentence with no chance of parole, even as a teenager. So they definitely believed that he was the one that killed him. So Brooks filed for clemency, and he did that with the help of Dru Nielsen. The people that were on the case was Dru Nielsen, Ashley Ratliff, and she was with the Ratliff law firm, and then a guy named Sean Connolly. They argued about the constitutionality of Colorado's sentencing law. This was related to minors. It went to the Colorado Supreme Court in 2018, and now it's actually set precedent on sentencing. This is a huge, huge win. Huge win. Okay? All right. And you can read about it. Hoskins wrote a book about this, and let's see, the description of Nielsen was a compassionate, reflective person, despite being, Okay. So that is Dru. That's the blonde. And Eyten was Law Week Colorado's best criminal defense lawyer for 2019. So both of them are honored in a huge way in 2019. She makes Barrister's Best in 2019 and 2020. And they are featured in a magazine article. They're featured in a magazine article, Super Lawyers, Colorado 2017. And under, let's see, let me get the article up and I'll get the picture so you can see the picture. There we go. There we go. All right. So Eyten is the force of nature, and Nielsen is the steadying hand. And I got to tell you, BZ Mama she could definitely tell you that is what we saw in the courtroom. That is an accurate reflection of the way they seem to work, right? Eyten is all. There were times where I would use the word abrasive for Eyten. We've been watching the Jodi Arias case. I used that as a sample of two teams that were outclassed. One was outclassed, right? Well, Eyten is more like the Juan Martinez. She's abrasive. She doesn't let go when she bites onto something, and she pushes, right? She pushes and she pushes and she pushes. Nielsen would step in when things were just about to go off the rails. In fact, there were several times when I was there, there were several times that the judge sat back and said, wait a minute, I think I'm confused. That's a quote. And everyone was confused, but you got to wonder, was it intentional? My guess is yes. My guess is that's how Eyten works. She wants to make it confusing. She wants the details to get lost in the chaos, so that when the jury goes back and begins to defend, their brain will naturally focus on what makes sense. And if you're a law-abiding citizen, then what makes sense is law-abiding things, right? The things that would stand out that would say, maybe this guy is not so law-abiding, that gets lost in the chaos. And so when Eyten creates this maelstrom, right? She creates this chaos. And then Nielsen steps in and puts everything back in order. And she's very calm. She uses very few words. She actually, I will say this to me, she actually comes across as more intelligent. But I don't think it's because she is more intelligent. I think they're both massive brains. I think she comes across as more intelligent because of her firm and steady demeanor, right? Whereas with Eyten she's stirring things up, and it's purposeful, right? Or in my opinion, it's purposeful. Okay, so this article about them, this is related to the trial of Tom Fallis. Now, Tom Fallis is a guy who stood trial in Weld County. Where did we hear that before? Well, Weld County was where Chris Watts killed his family. This happened in Greeley, okay? And this occurred on New Year's Eve, and I believe it was 2012. This man, Tom Fallis, Fallis, he was accused of murdering his wife in the early morning hours of January the 1st, immediately after this party that they had ends abruptly, and then it went downhill from there. The case was a difficult one, and it took quite a while to get resolved. But when they got Eyten on the case, things turned dramatically. So Ashley's death was initially ruled a suicide, but 2 years later, it came out that someone had been told by Tom that he killed his wife. And so the case was reopened 2 years after it was initially ruled a suicide. So the prosecution went after the police officers. There were notes written, there were recordings, there were interviews. But to make a long story short, Eyten put one of the Fort Collins detectives basically on trial, right? She turned the tables on the prosecution by basically prosecuting their investigators. Well, what do we know has happened in the Barry Morphew case? Cahill is out. Cahill is out on his ass in a big way with a Brady letter being sent to all the cases that he was working on, saying that with this particular detective, we have reason to believe that he is untrustworthy. Now, Cahill was not the guy that was in charge throughout the investigation, only for a short time in the beginning. Then he got called to his National Guard duty, and then the other guy took over, right? So do I have that backwards? Let me ask BZ. BZ knows. Hold on, I'm getting back over to my StreamYard. BZ, do I have that backwards? What is it? Lewis that got, who was there first? Cahill or Lewis? No, Cahill was not on the Watts, was not in the Watts investigation. There was another CBI agent was in the Watts investigation. But I'm trying to find out, am I right? Was it Cahill that went to the if BC doesn't know offhand, I'm gonna have to go back through my report and find it. Yeah, I think he's the one that left. Cahill started the investigation, and then he ended up getting called to weekend duty to his National Guard service. He left, and another guy took over, right? Cahill did not finish the investigation, correct? Okay, I'll come back and show you. I'll find the information and do an update, okay? I'll put it in the description under the video. So anyway, not only has Cahill been run out of town on a rail, but they are suing every person involved just about with the investigation of Barry Morphew. They're suing them. Linda Stanley is being sued by Barry Morphew. The sheriff of the town of Salida, he's being sued. Or not Salida, but Weld County. He's being sued. So this is kind of her MO. This is what she does. She puts the prosecution on trial. And, you know, she's a better attorney than the other side. And so people end up looking at the investigators like they're the bad people. And the person who actually did the crime or the person that's accused of doing the crime walks away scot-free, right? So let's see. So I'm just going to read this article about Nielsen, about Eyten and Nielsen in this case with Tom Fallis. Drew and Iris were not just interested in creating reasonable doubt. They wanted to convince the jury that their client, who was accused of shooting his wife, Ashley, after a New Year's Eve party in 2011, was completely innocent, that he had simply watched in horror as his wife killed herself. All we have to do is prove they don't have a case. And that's what she's trying to do with the Morphew case. Eyten is sitting beside Nielsen, her legal partner and her best friend. They're in a conference room in the Nielsen law firm that they co-founded in 2015. That's all that we need to do. We just go to court and we show that there is reasonable doubt. A simple cross-examination to show they do not have evidence, said Eyten. Can you see Iris doing that? Dru said with a laugh. I'm holding her back. I'm holding her back. As defense lawyers, Eyten adds, we're trained to be very careful about how we defend cases because prosecutors abuse facts that are completely benign to get a conviction. So you're not going and developing evidence for them. It's not what you do. It's not your burden of proof. That's called burden shifting. But with this one, it was so absurd that they were charging him with murder, and it was a nationally televised case. We were thinking, had they ever even put together the scene so that they could really understand how unjust this prosecution is? Instead, Eyten and Nielsen did it for them. They built the Fallis bedroom, complete with the actual furniture and measurements down to the millimeter. And during a cross-examination in Weld County courtroom, they did for the jury what they had practiced. Uh-oh, I lost my, there it is. Sorry. Okay. They did in the courtroom what they had done in the bedroom hundreds of times and in their office. Nielsen pretended to be the victim to show that Ashley Nielsen would have had to have been standing on the dresser when Tom Fallis shot her for the dimensions and bullet trajectory to add up. The jury came back with a not guilty verdict in under 4 hours. We did not have to prove his innocence, but we did, Eyten says. Civil rights attorney David Lane of Kilmer, Lane and Newman said of the Fallis trial, particularly the thoroughness of their investigation and creativity in forensics is a prime example of why he calls Eyten and Nielsen two of the best criminal defense lawyers he's ever met. Iris is a force of nature when she gets unleashed on a case, and Dru is a steadying hand. Defense attorney Pamela Mackey of Haddon, Morgan and Foreman says there are a lot of people in Denver with terrific legal skills, but not everyone will accept her 2 a.m. phone call or take care of their client's emotional needs the way Eyten and Nielsen do. Dru is calm, meticulous, and has outstanding judgment. Iris is passionate, wildly emotional, very, very intense, and she can be over the top. She's a force to be reckoned with. You have to step back when Iris is on a terror. They're extremely different people who complement each other's strengths and weaknesses. As an aside, Mackey suggests talking to the women separately. Dru can hardly get a word in edgewise when Eyten is in the room. In the conference room, Eyten is explaining how she became a criminal defense attorney. Her parents, originally from Iraq, immigrated to Israel and then Arizona before she was born. As a first-generation American, she felt isolated and embarrassed that she did not fit that American Girl doll kind of look or feel. She wanted to help kids who felt different and decided on a career in child psychology, a natural fit in a family where her father and brothers were doctors. But when her parents learned she was dating a non-Jewish boy at school, they cut her off financially. So to help pay tuition and expenses, she took a night job at the county mental hospital that changed the course of her life. She saw people being over-medicated for the staff's convenience. Eyten knew she did not want to be part of that system. She wanted to change it, but she did not know how. One day she saw a patient being escorted by a woman in a suit, and she asked, "Who is she?" "She's a lawyer." "What is she going to do?" "She's going to get her out of here." "That's what you have to do? You have to be a lawyer?" "Yeah." And she said, "Done." So during her second year at the University of San Diego School of Law, she felt disheartened when everyone started getting dressed up and going off to interviews at business law firms. What are you people going to do all day? She said. You're going to help more people make more money. Eyten used a scholarship to fund a summer in Montgomery, Alabama, where she volunteered on the landmark Wyatt and Stickney litigation, which sought to enforce access to treatment for those with mental illness or developmental disabilities. Later, she moved to Denver to work for what is now Disability Law Colorado, monitoring the state mental hospital. The work felt important, but she didn't feel she was helping individual people. I realized all of my clients were in the criminal justice system and I should be doing that. So I applied to be a public defender in 1999, which is how she became a criminal defense attorney. Eyten lets out a long breath and smacks the conference table. There you go. How many minutes was that? Nielsen said with a laugh. Mine will not be nearly as colorful. Nielsen knew she wanted to be a lawyer in junior high when family friend and attorney Lisa Wayne took her to Denver County Court for career day. During law school at the University of Colorado, she got an internship with the public defender's office. When she graduated, she became a public defender. See, she says, mine was not as colorful. It was in the public defender system that Eyten and Nielsen met. We'd go see live music together and then bitch about prosecutors. In 2001, after 3 years as a public defender, Eyten was asked by Larry Posner of Riley Posner to come join his firm. I did not want to work for a law firm, she says. It had nothing to do with who I was. Yet the offer was enticing. She'd have resources at her disposal and still pursue the mental health issues she was passionate about. So she made the leap. Around that time, she got involved with the Colorado Lawyers Committee. She led a team in suing the state mental hospital 3 times to reduce the amount of time mentally ill inmates had to wait for evaluation or treatment. This was a major piece of litigation for us, and it protected the rights of individuals in jail with mental health problems who were waiting as much as 6 months for mental health evaluation and mental health treatment. She was able to negotiate that number down to 28 days and make sure she got the state to agree to pay for an independent monitor who would ensure their compliance. But Eyten's caseload was growing, and she wanted a lawyer who could share it. By that time, Nielsen was a felony division lead at the Denver trial office, managing and training young lawyers. She had no plans to leave. Both Nielsen and Eyten got wistful looks when they talk about being public defenders. It is the best job I've ever had, Eyten says, and the best job Dru has ever had, to be able to stand up for somebody that doesn't have anyone standing up for them at any point in their life ever, and giving them a voice no matter if what they did was the most heinous thing. But you can say something kind about them in front of a judge. It's a unique experience. And to get to do that on a daily basis, 20 times a day, there can't be anything more fulfilling than that. Yesterday, Nielsen said, I did a hearing and I had 15 family members and friends sitting there supporting my client, which is really amazing. But it struck me. When you're a public defender, a lot of them don't have anyone come to court. Nobody. It's just you and the client. Well, maybe it's because they spent a lifetime pushing people away from them. But Nielsen made the leap too, joining Riley Posner in 2007. Then in 2015, as the firm downsized, they saw an opportunity. Their former boss, Larry Posner, says they were a natural pair to create a firm. People who do criminal defense well look at it as more of a statement of values than as a job, and they both care deeply about justice. David Kaplan of Haddon, Morgan & Foreman, who saw Eyten and Nielsen in the Colorado State Public Defender's Office, says not every public defender succeeds in practice, but Eyten and Nielsen knocked it out of the park. These are 2 hard-ass criminal defense lawyers who have the reputation of being really capable and competent in a tough business. Sean Conley of Zoni's Law, a former partner at Riley Posner, says the pair would often pop into his office wanting to brainstorm. They just had an excitement about their work and a belief in each individual client. They would often say, I've got this client and he's wrongfully accused. there's no cynicism with them. They really believe in what they're doing. I think we're a great team, Nielsen says. We talk about cases all the time. It's not just here in the office. Every night I'm talking to Iris about cases and I'm getting her perspective and she's getting mine. Currently, Eyten and Nielsen have carved out a niche representing carved out a niche representing college men accused of sexual assault. I think everyone agrees that RAPE is terrible and it happens, but not every time a woman alleges some type of abuse is it true. As explained in Eyten's Sex, Booze, and the Law lecture, the lawyers take issue with how Title IX has been applied to sexual assault allegations. Colleges, she contends, are afraid of losing federal funding, so they're stripping away due process by not allowing the accused to have lawyers and by basing expulsion decisions on a preponderance of evidence. That means, do we believe her a smidge more than we believe him? Let me tell you about that smidge. If the girl was drunk, she cannot consent, game over. You're expelled. You're done. That's the law these boys now have to respond to without having a lawyer. As Nielsen and Eyten try to do their jobs in the wake of an accusation, digging into text messages, social media, and interviewing students in the dorms, the investigation itself has been labeled retaliation and also lead to expulsion. I have no doubt that many good boys' lives have been ruined by the accusation. That's why it's the cases the public never hears about, for whom she secured a dismissal or no file up front, that Nielsen measures her success by. I've represented lawyers, doctors, students, all people with bright futures that do well in life, she says. When I think about those cases that are not in the news and the accused have gotten to go on with their lives and marriages and careers, I feel proud. One of Eyten's most memorable moments as a lawyer was at a sentencing hearing for a mentally ill client who had committed a pretty heinous crime. That's how Eyten described it, a pretty heinous crime. Eyten used psychiatrist testimony to try to get him a more lenient sentence, but he still got the maximum. She was visibly upset. Then her client reached over to grab her hand. It's okay, Iris. It's going to be okay. I'm going to be all right. That's the moment, she said. That's why we do it. Okay. So, look, the prosecution has got to do better. They have got to move beyond worrying about what these two women have been able to accomplish, and they have got to prosecute their case. They've got to get ready to get stuff thrown out of court. The DNA, they have got to find the money and hire a DNA specialist and get those partial matches thrown out before the trial ever begins. Not just sit there thinking, oh, well, we'll just explain to everybody that, it's not really a hit. It doesn't really mean anything. It'll be okay. We'll explain it to. No, you won't. When Eyten opens her mouth and finishes creating total and utter chaos, the only thing that jury is going to remember when they go in the deliberation room is that there was DNA found on the glove box that was not Barry Morphew's. That's it. All the other stuff that the prosecution is saying, well, we'll explain it. The jury will understand. It's going to get blown out to kingdom come by Eyten and her chaos. And then Nielsen is going to walk in and very calmly, she's going to say, look, I don't know what to tell you. This paper says there's a match. It's a partial match with 3 other cases. They were all RAPEs. That's what we're dealing with. Somehow, Suzanne Morphew came in contact with someone whose DNA was collected at 3 RAPE crime scenes. That's what you have to consider. And that is completely wrong. That is not what a partial match means on any level, not even close, right? So Linda Stanley, the prosecution, they have got to get busy getting that DNA thrown out. The other thing they have got to do is they have got to investigate those bank accounts. They must investigate those bank accounts and prove that no one has been accessing money there, that the person that opened those accounts was anybody but Suzanne Morphew, because they're going to use that to introduce reasonable doubt. Maybe Suzanne really did leave. Maybe she really did decide to leave. And for God's sake, the prosecution needs to get on the phone with the Mormons and tell them from here on out, every single time there is a hearing, they better have their butts sitting in that courtroom right behind the prosecution's table, just like Travis Alexander's family did. They better do that. If they want a conviction, they better do that. Right? All right. I heard they found DNA in the house. I don't think so, Margie. They found it on a bicycle. And at this stage of the game, it looks like they took photographs of the wrong damn bicycle, and they had the bicycle turned upside down. And the places that they claim they found their DNA were places that were in contact with the floor. So there's no doubt that the prosecution can get the DNA thrown out. There's no doubt. But they got to do something first. As far as I can tell, they hadn't made any move. I don't think they have done a damn thing, to tell you the truth. Absolutely, Teresa. Suzanne's family, the Mormons, they have got to get their head in this. They have got to stop being so passive. I'm telling you, Eyten and Nielsen, they're not playing. So Tom Fallis, this is a photograph of Fallis. They were in the courtroom. This guy, let me tell you what happened. So his wife invited about 12 people over for a New Year's Eve party. Does this sound like a woman who is depressed? I don't know about you, but when I was depressed, I didn't want to have a party at my house, because then you have to clean it up. And I didn't want to go to a party at anyone else's house, because then you had to smile and pretend to be okay. Right? She invited people over for the party. She did. Right? So they had this party, and a little bit before midnight, she said she was going to go outside and she was going to get some air and smoke a cigarette. Well, somehow, somewhere in the middle of all the insanity, Tom loses his mind and begins to accuse her of getting high. Now, they're in Colorado, okay? It's fairly legal at that point, right? So he's freaking out, because she went outside and smoked with some of her family members. They go into the bedroom, or upstairs, go to the bedroom, and they had this huge fight. And next thing you know, she's dead. He comes downstairs. He screams at her family and says, y'all came up, you just wanted to get her high. You just had to get her high, didn't you? He says, get out of here. I hate you. And then he goes back upstairs with his wife. And I guess at that point calls 911. there are so many other ways that the trajectory of the bullet could have been done than her standing up on top of a chest of drawers. That was fiction that was invented by Eyten and Nielsen. You know how when I'm doing comparisons, you know how I'd make like a totally ludicrous scenario, something really ridiculous? Well, you do that because it makes the contrast very vivid. Well, they did that in the courtroom. They built the bedroom in the courtroom. They showed a guy standing up on the chest of drawers who's going to get shot and said, this didn't happen. He didn't do this. But what the prosecution failed to say was, it's fiction. That didn't happen. What they just acted out in here did not happen. That is only one thing that could have happened. But look at all the other things that could have happened. And then they could have offered their own array of circumstances, but they were shocked. They were in shock. They didn't know what was coming. They weren't prepared. I'm making this video to put Linda Stanley on notice to be prepared. What is she going to do if they come in with the names and the RAPE histories of this guy from Arizona? Even if they do identify the person that left the DNA, if Linda Stanley is not busy trying to figure out how his DNA got into her car, how his DNA got onto her bicycle, then she's not going to have an answer for Eyten and Nielsen when they bring out the guy's name and rap sheet. She's not going to be able to say, yeah, this is all true, what they're saying. But what you don't know is this guy was a mechanic. And Suzanne took her car in on this date. And that guy is the one that serviced her car. They're not going to be prepared for that. And all Eyten and Nielsen are doing is introducing doubt. Hey, look, Suzanne's path crossed that of a known RAPIST. And the jury is going to, what'd they say, Tom Fallis? Less than 4 hours? The man was in the middle of a fight with his wife. The neighbors heard her screaming and begging for him to stop. She was begging him to stop. She was screaming at the top of her lungs. And then the gunshot. But guess what? Eyten and Nielsen, they got those statements thrown out before trial. They are doing their case before trial. The prosecution thinks this is old school and that they're going to have a cute little trial. These two women are not cute. They want to win. I mean, I don't know how you got a guy who commits a heinous crime, quote unquote. Eyten's own words, a heinous crime. He gets found guilty. He gets the maximum sentence. But she says it's all worth it because he says, it's okay, Iris. I'll be okay. That's what motivates her? Did she forget all about the heinous crime? So Linda Stanley, you better hang up your damn stupid, silly little black leather jacket and boots. And you better put your blue jeans on and you better get busy prosecuting your case. You're in trouble. Hands down, no question. Your investigators don't return phone calls. They don't go and pick up and catalog evidence properly. I guess they're busy getting drunk. I can't explain Cahill's behavior any other than he's just a wild ass idiot. I don't know what's wrong with him, but he's shooting off firearms in his own house. All right. Okay. Tell me what you're confused about, Teresa. Something needs done today. Maybe this is what DA was waiting on. Confused, really. My head is spinning. Suzanne's family. Suzanne's family must, but there's a psychological aspect to every murder trial. Every murder trial. The psyop is real. And you got to remember, Eyten wanted to be a psychologist all in the beginning, right? So she has that background, and I'll guarantee you they have a psychologist on standby. They have someone that they work with who's there to teach them how to get people to do what they want them to do. Guarantee you. So the Morphew family, Suzanne's family, any family, doesn't matter if it's nephews or if it's the brothers, it doesn't matter. As many of them as possible, they need, from here on out, every single hearing, there needs to be an army in that courtroom. Family members filled. That courtroom needs to be filled with Suzanne's family members, period. And then when they walk out, every one of them needs to be given a statement to Lauren Scharf and the other media. This is this. If they want, look, in my heart, and I know the evidence that was in that arrest affidavit. I know it forward and backwards. When they released those photographs, I knew immediately what every single one was and what the significance was. In my heart, I believe he did it. I mean, in my heart, I believe it. It's such a typical story for domestic abuse. It's so typical. His behaviors, his actions, it's so typical. If they want him to be held accountable for what he did, they must start being, if for no other reason, let me tell you this. If for no other reason, what good would come out of the Mormons being in that courtroom every single hearing? I'll tell you what, because the prosecution will know that someone is watching them. The prosecution, the investigators will know that they will be held accountable for the verdict. And when people are being watched, when people know that someone is evaluating their performance, what do? They do better, right? They do better. Right now, the way it stands, when I went to the hearing, there were more YouTube creators in the courtroom than there were Suzanne Morphew family members in the courtroom. That is a fact. This is not in the hands of just the prosecutor. Look up Jodi Arias' trial. Look who is sitting behind Juan Martinez every single day for more than 2 years. 3 of his sisters never missed not one day. of the trial and all the hearings. Not one. They were a force. And Travis, because they went in numbers and they didn't miss a single day, Travis Alexander was in that courtroom every single day. They have got to bring Suzanne back. They've got to bring her back, and they've got to have her sitting in the courtroom with them. They must do that. That's right, Dana. Absolutely. All right. So that is that is this video or rant or whatever. It really is not intended to be a rant, and this is really intended to be information that says, hey, your opponent, Linda, they are real and they came to play. You are going to be made to look stupid. You looked stupid during the original hearing, the preliminary hearing. You're going to continue to look stupid, Linda, if you don't start acting like a professional attorney. Get your DNA experts and get the DNA thrown out before you ever go to court, or Eyten is going to kill you with the DNA. And find out everything you can about those two bank accounts. If you can, you got to prove that Barry is the one, or one of Barry's associates are the ones that opened those two bank accounts as a red herring, a ruse to make it look like Suzanne was leaving. You better do that too. And for God's sake, you've got to get Suzanne's family members to come to every hearing from here on out. They've got to be there. All right. I have another video I'll be making about Barry. I don't want to add it on to the back of this one because we'll end up with another 2-hour, video. But I do have another one about Barry and the evidence that has been released so far and what it may mean for Barry and who he is and why he does things that he does, what we can believe about him and what we can trust in, right? All right. Y'all have a wonderful day. I hope the bird was not really, a huge distraction. It'll be interesting to see what the sound is like because I turned it down to about half of what it normally is. Thank all of you so much for listening and being here. Like I said, I do have another Barry video that I'll be making. And then we're going to look at Dr. Samuels versus Juan Martinez. All right. See y'all later. Have a great day.